Hello. Okay, I just want to turn down my mic a little bit. Okay, great. Um, awesome. I All right, we are just yeah, just now we're getting set up here. Can the people who are in the chat right now maybe just like uh type anything in there just so that way I'm sure that I'm actually live and that you can hear me. Mm. Okay, you can hear me? Awesome. Fantastic. Let me just send out one quick tweet and then I will get started. I have really no idea how many people are going to show up. This is really just like, in part, I'm trying to figure out one, how to do YouTube live stream, and two, like if this is actually an enjoyable format, because I've been filming myself reading things lately, and it leads to me, I think, reading them in a better way. But I haven't really done anything live. Uh, so, and we're live. Starting with a review of chapter 1. All right. Okay, and with that, I am going to close Twitter here, uh, fully in the stream right now. So, I just I started reading this Chatting with Glue a few days ago, and I did a little film of myself doing just going through chapter 1, and I might oh. And there, like I might just try to uh sorry, still figuring some stuff out, but we're still seeing some people just kind of coming in. But anyway, while I was reading Chatting with Glue, I was just kind of amazed, like a lot of it really resonated with me. And I've only really gotten through chapter 1 and like part way through chapter 2 so far. But I guess I'll just give you a quick summary of chapter 1, which is essentially saying there's a lot of information that comes across through the words that we say, but like there's a lot of information that comes across in our conversations in general, beyond just the text of the message. And that's one of the ideas that really fascinates me because it gets along. I don't remember the theorist's name who was talking about this, but there's some thinking in just the way that communication and social from communication and social psychology where they're talking about channels of communication, right? Like we have multiple ways that we can communicate with each other, and uh, and more information is conveyed than just what comes through from the words. Like for example, I'm gesturing with my hands right now, and that kind of gives like a little bit of emphasis. It shows a little bit into the way that I'm thinking. My tone of voice conveys information. The way that I pause while I'm speaking conveys information. You know, so so that was one of the ideas that really resonated with me. But then there was also just that the way that our chats are structured, the way that our communications are structured, can actually influence the way that we have them. So, like here he says that, chats can linearize our thinking. It makes us think that it's all just like one stream going up and down. And that's just not true. Our conversations, they meander, they go from one topic to another topic, and then they come back to it. It's also saying that chats engrave our conversations. That adds a little bit of an element of concreteness to it. That while I'm speaking, there's an ephemerality to it. Like for example, if I would, if I decide to add this, if I decide to add this video just to my YouTube channel after it's done, then that's not ephemeral. That's concrete. It's transcribed. It's engraved. Whereas, if I were to just put this stream out there and then as soon as it's done, it's gone, and no one can view it except myself after that, then that makes it more ephemeral, compressed. I think that what he's trying to say here is just that by nature of the fact that we actually have to like type things in, I think that's essentially making it so it's making it so our knowledge is put into like a few words, and it goes back to like this channels of communication thing that I was talking about earlier, which is that channels of communication, which is that like we convey more information than just the text when we're talking with each other. Mm, Give me a sec. I'm going to see if I can switch up the latency on this. Mm, I'm going to end this stream and come back to it in just a second. Or is that how it works? I don't know. Well, regardless, I'm just gonna run with this because I don't want to have to deal with sending a bunch. Again, give me 2 seconds though. I'm just gonna change into a shirt that I like a little better for this. But all right, so I'm back. And so we've covered I think what the main themes are of chapter one. uh, Cover the main themes of chapter one, which is that, um, which is again just that like our conversation through our conversations in person, we convey more information than just the text, but also the way that the conversational interface is designed, it it changes the way that we behave within the context of that app. Like for example, in Slack, that allows some threading, and like with threading and with multiple channels, that ends up creating a different set of behaviors than what you end up seeing in just like normal text messaging, which is just like one long string of chat, you know. So those are the main themes of chapter one, I'd say. The structure of the app. Oh, I'd also say there's one more theme, which is that the structure of the chat can actually convey meaning. So this is going to to go back to this idea of channels of communication. Like um, we can convey meaning simply through the structure of what we message. So before we move on to chapter two, I also want to point out what I think are some core questions that we should be thinking about as we're reading this. So one of those is, what is it about conversations that allow and enable thought? Like many of my friends, they tell me that their best ideas and thinking comes up in conversation. So if you have any ideas or thoughts on what conversation allows, in what it is about the conversations you're in where you're in your best thinking, I'd love to see some of those thoughts in the chat. Maybe just write that down for your own notes. And then there's also, what is another important question is, what does a computer conversation enable that's different from what a face-to-face conversation enables? That's another question that I think is going to be a core theme all throughout the rest of this. And then another core question that I think is important is, what sorts of how can we design conversations? Like for example, a Socratic seminar is a different conversational design, um, than like just two people talking to each other. We could also alter like the group structure. We could have one-on-one conversations, one to group conversations, group to group. Like all of these are different conversational designs. Um, I want to just like elaborate real quick on this question and this question. Some of my thinking on, my best thought in during conversations is that, I've already thought out some of the core ideas, but the questions and thoughts of others take my thoughts in new directions. Like I think that's an important thing. Uh, I also find that like there's certain sorts of responses, I guess, that end up leading to a better conversation. It's not just about the structure of the conversation, but also about like, is my conversational partner yes anding me to go in what's it called in terms of like improv, right? And then I think this is also an important idea, which is the act of explaining an idea is a forcing function for clear articulation in mental models, but then the other person's response, either verbally or non-verbal, is going to lead to further elaboration. I'm definitely interested in this question, and I'm hoping to see more of this elaboration in this essay, which is really just what does a computer conversation enable that's different from what a face-to-face conversation enables. Because I think this goes to the idea of, I'm just going to write down to come back to channels of communication are different. Yeah. Okay. Great. I don't think I need to go all the way through my notes here. Now let's just go ahead and move on to chapter 2. Um, Also, I think that I'm not going to be keeping up too closely with the chat, but what I'd really encourage you doing is like uh, posting the questions that you think are important to this ebook, in discussing those there, and yeah, just having that question mark too. I'll keep a lookout for question marks, so that way hopefully I can respond to those. Um, and we can go from there. Okay, so chapter 2, The Shape of Wandering. Conversation's a construction, the ideas are bricks, and time is the scaffolding. Sometimes we build small houses, so like he's saying that many ideas are like building on each other. And other times we have skyscrapers. I think something that's interesting here is just like the way that he's using color. Right? So all of these in this stack are the same color, and then all of these in this stack are the same color. And so that's kind of indicating to me that the, uh, yeah, emojis are great, Bardia. Thank you. That'll be great to get my attention. But I think that he's indicating here that like he might be referring to the normal way that chats go, which is that they're linear. And so that would imply that like the ideas are, you're talking about one thing at a time. So each of these towers are separate. Over time, you can have bigger and bigger ideas. Bigger and bigger ideas, but he's saying, it's often less simple, rarely a straight predetermined path, topics split and converge, we wander, and we leave ourselves behind. Yeah, so I think this is something that like normal chat apps, uh, they have different takes on it, because if you have just like one long linear chat stream like we have in the live chat right now, then that adds a little bit of ephemerality to it. It's hard to come back to previous points in the conversation. Whereas with channels like you have in Slack, that enables um, further, like moving from place to place. moving from topic to topic and back, but channels kind of implies that there's only a few topics of conversation. And you know, like this, what we have on the screen right now, this image, that's true even if you have channels. Things go all the way around. When our conversations go on for longer, the focus shifts, remarks jut out of their context and return again. My friends call this popping off the stack. Yeah, so that was pretty much just what we were talking about. What we were talking about just a second ago. Um, and I actually already have notes on this specific part, but I figured it'd just be cleaner to start from chapter 2 and go on. Let's see if I can find where I maybe started writing about this. But anyway, so should our chat interfaces look like skyscrapers or something less linear? Oh, I'm just going to write down a core question. How do we capture topic shifts and returns in a way that is legible? I'm just going to bold that because I think that that to me is one of the most challenging things maybe about outlines. But yeah. So I don't think the existing idiom of threads completely captures what I'm describing. A Slack thread continues the conversation in one dimension and doesn't afford veering off infinite stack pushes. So like I can't respond from, I can't respond within a thread by starting a new thread. And honestly, like that sort of approach can just bury things. You know, like I think something that can get ignored about the outliner structure is that it draws more attention to the top level things. So like here, I'm going to pay more attention to the things that are the top level bullets than down here. But by the time something has threaded pretty significantly, it can get lost, and it can be just as important as the top level thing, but it can be on a sort of different subject. Or you know, I'm just gonna make this a header just so it's quick for me to come back to um, this one too. Okay. And then I'm just going to write here, threads can lose what's important and outlines. Deepness only conveys that the message is building on previous ideas. I just want to real quick talk about what I mean by this. I'm gonna connect this to how does Rome know how blocks are related to each other. That's just a page that I have that kind of documents this. Bardia, shoot me a DM on Twitter, and I'll respond to it. How do we capture topic shifts? Yeah, but so this goes back to the idea earlier expressed of we can convey meaning through structure. And that's kind of like what an outline allows. So like Rome, I'm able to say like this block is a child node of this one. And so that means it's building on this block up here, right? If I were to say that these two are sibling nodes, I'm telling it that both of them build on this parent node, but they're not really related. So that's just a way that I can convey meaning solely through the structure of it. Oh, so this one I thought was really cool. I'm going to zoom in on it a little bit. I'm going to zoom in on it a little bit. And I just thought it was cool because I think that this outliner structure, like here, I'm signaling that this response is building on this one and that this comes later. I'm not, I can't say I know exactly what it's conveying, but what I can, just because I'm not really privy to this conversation, it's kind of hard to just like read it here, but what I think it's doing is it's adding a time dimensionality to it, which I think is just super duper cool. Um, so yeah, like these sorts of outlines here, uh, as you can see in this, convey information. It says, well, remember when I talked about jutting out? Isn't that just reply threading? These are replies and this is threading, but the metaphor I prefer here to use here is outlining. Oh, you know what? I think this is better than the way that sibling nodes are handled in Rome. Or at least it's better for the case of a chat. Because, well, remember when I was talking about jutting out, isn't that just reply threading? So it's saying that both of these comments, they're both relevant to what kind of affordances, but this one comes later in time. And so like sibling nodes are used more to convey time rather than being unrelated to their siblings. They're totally related to their siblings, so I think that's super interesting. Love adding that time component, and also just want to add like just these additional channels of communication, right? He's got color in here, so let's see, channels of communication. Chat's low bandwidth because not much information. Okay, so color is a channel of communication. Emojis are a I'm just gonna channels of communication. Okay, emojis, the message, right? So you'll notice he's also using different colors to convey different people. I think that makes a lot of sense for one-on-one conversations, or even small group conversations. I'd be curious how this would scale to an organization. Um, Something that's also probably worth considering is that the way that the chat interface would end up having to look would probably be different based on organization size. So um, I'm just going to write down core question. How would considerations change over the size of an organization? Or change with different group sizes? Dyad. Oh gosh, that's a weird bug. Dyad groups small group broadcasting with comments, and then also broadcasting with comments, and then also like a giant group with small breakouts. Okay. Yeah. Outlines are locally linear. Adjacent bullets are adjacent remarks. You know what? Before I go on further, I'm just kind of realizing real quick that I'm not totally familiar with what I've already written in here. So I just want to familiarize myself real quick. So one core question is, yeah, like what is it about conversations that supports effective thinking? Then there's also what does a computer enable that is different from what face-to-face conversations enable? Oh, this is an interesting little note from my last time, which is, or I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. Making connections is one way we think about how different concepts relate to each other. Another way is through noticing distinctions. These two together lead to many mental models. Yeah, so we can't just do connections between things, right? Yeah, we've got to also be able to say this is not the same. Okay, conversational media has affordances that was just a note from direct transcription of it, almost, but I'm just going to say, I'm going to highlight the word affordances so I know that I can go back to this. God, I really wish I just could have like a table of contents here, especially for long pages like this where it's just like taking my the headers that I use and just letting me like quickly like click through, jump to different locations. That would be beautiful for a close reading of an article like this. How might we design our conversations? Yeah, so conversation structure. Um, and then, oh yeah, I'm gonna make this here the header because this is what I actually want to pay attention to. I explain things a little differently to every person I explain it and every instance where I explain it. A straight text search wouldn't be able to link those ideas as meaning the same thing. So that's another uh, that's just like another thing that I'm curious to see if this essay deals with as a challenge. How do we capture topic shifts and returns in a way that's legible? Chat's low bandwidth. What are that's his words. I'm just gonna change that to what possible channels of communication do we have? Um, outline structure. How would considerations change with different group sizes? Um, I'm just gonna cut and paste that back over, where do I have, um, how might we design our conversations? Yeah, how would we consider change with different group sizes? Okay. Oh yeah, looks like I'm just noticing a few areas where I'm replicating myself. So size / general um, orientation in space. Okay, great. Coming back to this, I promise I'll read this article eventually. But what I like doing, what you'll notice about my process is that I'm really just trying to like see if I can think through the same things that he's thinking through and identify my own challenges and thoughts around it. Because I figure if I do that, like, one, it's going to lead to me just getting so much more out of the article, because that would mean I'm coming to it from a place of already starting. So I guess this goes back to, I'm going to make this a little bit bolder here. You know, like the best the best conversations, you know, that I have, at least for the case of thinking, is that I've already thought through it just like a little bit at least, and they've already thought through it just a little bit. So that way we're not starting from scratch, you know. So like if I'm just reading through it, then that would mean it's kind of like I'm getting lectured to, whereas like if I'm identifying these core questions that I can come back to, and that I can be thinking about constantly as I go through it, then that makes it a little bit more, in Max's words, dialectic. So just as our okay, outlines are locally linear, adjacent bullets are adjacent remarks, and nesting occurs naturally when an idea goes deeper. Um, just as our thoughts propagate through branches, outlines are recursive, fanning into substructures defined as much by content as by linkages and relations. It's true. Um, totally on board with that. Just goes back to what I was talking about earlier with like the way that Rome puts structure into its conversation, puts structure, I guess, into just meaning into the structure of what you're writing. Brain fart. Bullet journals, Rome, and workflowy treat outlines as the fundamental primitive for writing. This has several benefits. Once everything's a bullet, so we can split ideas apart as they grow. Bullets can relate to each other. By relate, I mean linking bidirectionally. Yeah, I mean, since Rome came out, like, and people really started using it, I don't think people can I don't think people are going to be able to really go back to unidirectional linking. Like it's maybe it has its uses in some cases, but that's a topic for a whole other situation. But yeah, no, every bidirectional linking I think is just going to be table stakes soon, or at least that's what I'm hoping happens. And when things get messy, any bullet can be reordered, collapsed, or simply removed. Totally. Totally, totally. The only problem, bullets are made of text, not messages. This is a strange but important distinction. Um, it's important to remember that conversation's still a game of turn taking, so yeah, uses color to do the turn taking. Each conversation has a cast of characters to keep track of. We should know who wrote what if we want to give each individual voice a voice. That's just edit history. These tools solved that years ago. I'm going to go real quick to channels of communication. Yeah. Um, text formatting like bold and bold, italics, and highlighting can convey enthusiasm. Outline structure conveys relations between ideas. Also can convey a sense of time. See how this handles sibling nodes. I'm going to take a screenshot of this. Oh, snappy. And move this over into my notes. Emojis can convey convey emotions and tone. I'm going to leave color open-ended as to what it can communicate. Same with size and general orientation in space. That sort of relates to outline structure, but you can go further. So I'm just going to tag 2D navigation in here as a thought to remember and come back to. Size can convey importance. I mean, you've seen the way that I do that throughout this. Like here, even I have this top level node, but like the header marks that this is the important thing, and I do that throughout. Okay. Edits to textual outlines aren't atomic. The provenance of a message gets smudged and eventually erased entirely. It's hard to keep track of meaningful changes in these live documents. Yeah, so I think what's being conveyed here, if he's continuing to use the color metaphor that he's already established, is that this is being edited by multiple people. But also, like, some of these edits are super tiny. You know, like maybe just changing whether like two, is all caps or not all caps, right? That's not a meaningful change, and the only thing that people really should be notified about are meaningful changes. So I guess I want to ask the question, how might we, or what is worth notifying people about? There was a question earlier that I think that actually should just be nested under conversational media as affordances. Wait, let's see, what did I write? What's worth notifying people about? Oh yeah, legibility. So something that you'll probably notice, just like a little bit of a hack, is that I've set up Keyboard Maestro so that way I can do, hashtag space space, double hashtag space space, etc. To get header 1, header 2. That's just a carryover from other Markdown editors that I missed. So one of my contentions with our conversational media is the immutability of messages. And it's true that text editing affords changes to conversations after they've been said, but it's also true we shouldn't forget how we got to that state. Behind every product is a process. More on this later. Yeah, so definitely excited to see that. Time. I have a thought down here. Okay. Ideas develop over time, but time can be a friction in the development of those ideas, or it can support it. How might it support idea development between people? How might we track changes in edits over time, or changes in the idea over time? Because like the way that like Rome would do it is it would give you a chain of block references. Um, and those would be dated, but the thing that's hard about that it the thing that's hard about that is I'm not really seeing all too many Rome users doing block references, right? Like what happens way more often is these page references because it's just like a little bit less granular. It's just like a little bit less granular, like pages are a little bit easier to remember than a specific thing I said somewhere on the page, you know. And when you get to just sheer quantity, right? When you have thousands and thousands of blocks of text, then you can lose. Then you can lose a lot of them, and you're not going to do block references every single time that you reference a previous idea. Um, and with a chat, that problem gets multiplied. Um, so how do we encourage linking to messages with granularity? Alternatively, how do we enable less granularity than individual messages? Okay. And then the other question there, how do we track changes in the idea over time? How do we encourage linking to messages with granularity? Especially with the quantity that comes from a chat. Additionally, with there is the problem of memory, especially for things that other people said that you either missed entirely or just got lost in your mind. Okay. Division of attention. Sometimes in a conversation we're on the same page. Other times our interests diverge. This is natural. Everyone has different interests at times. So I just want to point out with this image right here, this is my favorite image that I've seen so far. And it's just how much information he conveys with so little text. Everyone has different interests at times. Like with these highlights, and these different colors he's signaling, he's already told us through his consistent visual language that purple is one person and blue is another person, and he's telling us where people are paying attention and what sticks out. Like, I don't think he even needed to say this. I don't think that was necessary, but I just think that's so. I think that's so beautiful. Yeah, outlines give us the freedom to add bullets wherever we want, effectively parallelizing our conversations when need be, and when we want to catch up on each other's thoughts. Um, and thanks to the atomicity of discrete messages, we know exactly what's new. I'm not sure if this does actually tell us exactly what's new, because yeah, I feel like time is just as important here. We can't remove the time element from the structure of this. Like that's something that like the linear structure of normal chat apps works really well with. But with something being indented under something else, that sort of signals that it's less important and can also lead to something getting buried, especially if you're focusing far too hard on it. Or like if you're looking at like an outline zoomed out, right? So we would probably need to have some level of zoom in the interface in order to keep up with time. So let's see, time, where did I write that? Real time and rapid feedback. People have time. Would Zoom allow people to see manipulated in order to convey information about importance of the message combined with time? Time is important for these, for conversations. Okay. So Zoom can be a channel. Yeah, I don't need to write can be a channel of communication just because it's there, but already in the outline structure. Okay, recursive summarization. So now is the point where I have not read anything further than this. What you're about to see is entirely just going to be me grappling with this. So it may slow down the pace just a little bit. May slow down the pace just a touch, but yeah. Recursive summarization. Amy X. Shang notes that it can be hard to catch up on a deeply nested conversation, especially ones with tens of thousands of participants. Okay, so he's talking about exactly what some of the things that I've noticed here before. So like left discussions are often long and difficult to get an overview. Right, recursive summaries can be constructed to enable hierarchical exploration. Yeah, so like I definitely think hierarchical exploration is better maybe than the long chat, but the long chat does have the advantage of like newer things are prioritized, and so people are more likely to see that. So I guess maybe part of what's important here is dimensionality, right? So here the difference between this and like what I see a normal outline as is that it's completely separate, so like it's a lot easier to scan that. It's two-dimensional navigation. But I wonder if there's, like a potential issue with the outline structure. So this is something that I've experienced a lot. So like I'm gonna just collapse this for a second. So like let's say that I've got all of these examples of channels of communication, right? So normally the way that I build on an idea is through uh, hierarchy, right? So like I can indent under this, and this shows that this idea is building on color as a channel of communication. But what if I want to say, because of all of these things, uh, I now make this point. So build on multiple ideas at once. I'm gonna just make like a little misc thoughts section here. I'm scrolling down. Because I'm not really sure like what I want to do with this at this point. Weaknesses of the outline structure. I think that's good enough for me to go from there. I'm just going to turn that into a question. I mean, what do you think are the weaknesses of the outline structure? If you have any ideas, I'd love to see them in the chat. Weaknesses of the outline structure for conveying meaning. What are the weaknesses? Okay, recursive summarization. Yeah, so here he's not saying something new. He's just saying that like the outlines can enable, well, okay, so he's saying that the outlines enable exploration that way. So I guess the question is just like whether people can jump, whether it's easy to jump back and forth at different points of the exploration, because like here, we have like a top level node, and then here we have all these bottom nodes. But I guess just one of the challenging things is by the time that you're at like this bottom node is like the idea may have changed entirely, right? It may look totally different from the topic up here. So it doesn't, because conversations do meander in a way that's a little bit more spontaneous than I guess like writing in an outline might. Her system, Wickham, takes advantage of the collapsibility of outlines to make deep threads shallower for later consumption. Yeah, I guess just, yeah, the weakness of the outline structure, one of the main weaknesses is that it assumes that later in the hierarchy, um, the topic will still be the same as near the top. A possible solution would be multiple entry points for browsing. Yeah, I think just one of the things, quantity. Yeah, one of the things that's super important just to remember through all of this is that um, like quantity is going to be a big thing that comes up, right? Because there can be a lot of messages that come out of a chat. Not to mention, we can rearrange messages at will to improve clarity for readers later on. Yeah, I I think that one of the things I'm just not sure if I'm agreeing with so far about this is that I think like rearranging messages at will, you may lose some time information, and I do think that time is important for conversations. I mean, Max, if you're still in here, I'm curious, I'm curious what you think, because the impression I'm getting so far is that topics is far more important than time for this, which may be true, but yeah, maybe that just goes back to yeah, how might we track changes in the idea over time? Would a meaningful change in edit history simply be the reorganization of an idea? Wait, organization of ideas. or meaningful changes. Would a meaningful change in edit history simply be the reorganization of an idea? Could people manually mark that it was a meaningful change? Okay, let's see what the chat's saying so far. When I want to add a comment to what I'm reading, it's often meta or loosely coupled to the focused content. Let's say you're texting and you have an idea, you want to write it out, but I don't want to text it right now. It's like you want to email yourself the idea from that point in the conversation, so you backtrack. So what does that exactly mean? Let's say your text. Yeah, so people wanna like couple their thoughts with the original context. So I guess that could just go towards the point of multiple entry points throughout the hierarchy. Splitting. Sometimes when you write something, it turns out really long, and all of a sudden you have a whole paragraph, and your friend has to piece apart each point you make. Not only is this time-consuming to write and respond to, but it's painful to format and hard to read. Hold on, let's try that out again with the power of bullets. Yeah, no, I think that's great. Yeah, bullets can really help. Um, Bullets can really help with breaking up individual ideas and just atomatizing things a little bit, which is definitely more readable. And suddenly the structure of outlining merges with the liveliness of conversation. I will point to a personal experience of mine, which is that I always thought it was a bummer that there was such a social norm against sending many texts in a row to the same person. Because it really does feel more conversational to me than typing one long message. Like just the idea that I am breaking up ideas. Uh, Breaking up ideas into bullets is kind of like punctuation. So let's go back to channels of communication, um, line breaks. Is definitely one channel of communication. Okay. Um, Forming a kind, and suddenly the structure of outlining merges with the liveliness of conversation, forming a kind of building material, a glue. I'm a fan of wandering because for me, chats often turn into notebooks. The idea I value most are the ones I want to share, like this one from David Perel. Most people are bad writers but excellent text messengers. Their writing is bad because they try to sound smart, but once they open Microsoft Word. But when they text, they write with clarity and enthusiasm. If you're stuck, write like you're sending an important text message. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'm not really sure entirely well, I'm not entirely sure what's meant by glue. I'm not sure what's entirely meant by glue. But now I'm just going to go ahead and move on to chapter 3. By the way, I'm going to continue doing this for like 15 more minutes. And then I've got to prepare for another event. But which you're also free to join tonight. If you check my Twitter account, you'll see that I'll be moderating a panel in about an hour and 15 minutes. Chapter 3, Conversation over Time. Uh, True storytellers do not know their own story. Neither do they know anyone else's story in its entirety. The primary work of historians is to reveal continuity where we have assumed something to be ended. where does the message, okay, or I just want to think about that quote for a sec. Okay, so maybe this is saying that there's a little bit of curation that needs to be that needs to happen in hindsight. So like historians, oh, that's interesting. Or I'm gonna go to organization, group structure. How would considerations change with different group sizes? Might start needing, or what are the roles of different people? Is there intentional chat management in the same way as knowledge management? And I'm also going to connect this to successful. This is a book that I'm reading, Building Successful Online Communities, that might have some thoughts on this. And then also Howard Rheingold. Yeah. I'm just gonna do that as hashtags, so that way it's not quite as loud. But where does a message go after you've sent it? As if it wasn't hard enough already to manage our linear chat notifications, now we have a multi-dimensional glue space to track changes for. How are we supposed to catch up with an excited outliner or a group of them? Now we have a multi-dimensional. As if it wasn't hard enough already to manage the chat notifications. I think about this problem in terms of two spaces, tree space and leaf space. Okay, wait, I need to think about what this is actually saying first before I go on. As if it wasn't hard enough to already to manage our linear chat notifications, now we have a multi-dimensional glue space. Yeah, so I guess that goes back to legible. Yeah, how are we supposed to catch up with an excited outliner or a group of them? Yeah, I want to make a point here, and this goes back quantity. I'm going to draw that connection in just a second, or actually quantity that comes from chat. Outliners encourage more writing, especially with the quantity that comes from a chat. Oh, I really like how that ended up transcluding right there. I think about this problem in terms of two spaces, tree space and leaf space. Tree space, this is the space we've been working with so far. It's active, it shows the whole conversation, from the roots to their offshoots, to the offshoots of their offshoots. 2 hours later, suddenly while you're away, there's an update. Oh, hey, see how Pink's message is marked by new. That's not the only one. Let's climb up the tree with those buttons below. Oh, I like that idea. Notify. What's worth notifying people about? He shows people for what's new, and probably has a good way of unwinding, or uncollapsing from there. Maybe it could just show the hierarchy path all the way from the top node to the direct hierarchy path from top node to the one of interest. Yeah, so I like that, being able to like just hop up that way. Notice the pink glow on the side. That's an ambient red status telling us that pink saw our message. Yeah, I think that this works here for that works for a one-on-one conversation. That would probably collapse pretty quickly with group size. Small group, red status. This works here, not elsewhere with too much size. Okay. And then I also want to just do a screenshot of this so that way I remember, what I'm referring to with suddenly while you're away there was an update notification. Yeah. This is the space we've been working with so far. It's active. It shows the whole of the conversation from the roots to their offshoots to offshoots of their offshoots. Yeah. Notice the pink glow on the side. That's an ambient red status telling us that pink saw our message. The clicker is unique to tree space. It lets us jump around quickly to see what's new. Aside, I'd also like to explore mini maps in the future to visually represent unreads in a compact way. Yeah, I wonder if there's a better table of contents for something like this, because like a table of contents probably doesn't work for something with as many root nodes, I guess, as a chat's likely to have. But tree space is super handy when you're conversing in real time or want a bird's eye view, but it's dense and you sometimes want a more brief digest of what's new in your tree. That brings us to leaf space. Okay, so it seems like he's addressing some of the concerns that I had earlier. If tree space is an outline, leaf space is a timeline. It's a shallow representation of our outline, showing us what's new with just a bit of context. Now I see this is a leaf I'm sending you. Oh, wait, so is he actually like with the outline here showing timestamps? I love that. Or not timestamps, but the difference in time. Yeah. Let me find time. Below time. Okay. Yeah, I'm just taking a screenshot here and moving this over because I want to be able to actually point specifically to this idea. I like showing time intervals like he does here with the outline. Recall what the second group of messages looked like collapsed in a tree space. While tree space has an abundance of context, leaf space has an abundance of salience. Yeah, time is definitely a salient thing. I believe both spaces have a place in a glue chat. Jumping back to this, if managed properly, I don't think push notifications are necessarily evil, Well, yeah, no, of course they're not evil. Um, especially if like it's a conversation with people that they care about where you're able to keep track of like what's an important what's important to them, like then it's all very like goal aligned there. We saw that in leaf space, thanks to the hierarchical structure of the outline, notifications can be grouped together. By no means is this a perfect solution to the information overload we experience on the daily, but perhaps it can be better organized. I'm starting to hit a little bit of a mental wall. This has definitely been a lot. This has been very close reading and thinking about this material. Uh, I really like some of the things that I was doing here. Like I don't often use just Command F to bounce around quickly, but it just felt very natural to do here, very quick. Um, I like structuring my notes around core questions. I think that leads to a pretty natural outline for myself. I'll probably be going through this outline and kind of like resorting a few things. There might be a few areas where the outline doesn't really make too much sense, or at least where I can do like a block reference or something that might show how ideas are better related to each other. Let me know what you think about this format. I mean, like in the chat, like what did you think about this? Was this interesting? Was it slow? Like what did you think about it? I'm super curious to be doing maybe like more of these sorts of live streams. So yeah, definitely interested in any feedback. I guess I'll just do, before I go, I'll do a quick reading of some of the chat that I missed because I wasn't really paying too good of attention to it. Max Krieger says the punchiest visual metaphors he comes up with are generally in the shower, and that he has a waterproof shower notebook. Wow, that's a great idea. I'm definitely doing that, getting a shower notebook for myself. Um, Bardia requested my CSS. Okay, I'll share that. I'll probably just post it in the comments for this video. Steon says he loves seeing my CSS, my process, and my ideas in the original essay. Dizzying. I feel like there's some relevant CSCL research here I could dig up. What's CSCL? I don't know what that is, but if anyone can just say in the chat real quick, maybe they know. He wants me to share my notes publicly on this. Yeah, maybe I'll put this into my public Roam. I haven't really made my public Roam editable, and I don't know if I want to. But I'll definitely at least put it there so people can copy and paste, and I'd love it if you do end up building on my outline. Would love it if you um, responded back to me and kind of like shared that with me. Super interested to see how these ideas build. But yeah, so I guess with that, I'll be concluding this live stream. Um, that was me giving a summary of part one, or of chapter one of this webcomic, and then also doing chapter two. And I got a little bit into chapter three, but if I do a follow-up video to this, I'll probably just start from chapter three. And I just want to say that this is a super well made and well thought out webcomic coming from Max. Absolutely brilliant. Uh, Not sure if we'll end up agreeing on everything, but like I'm loving seeing your ideas, and I think that in the very least you have a great handle on what's important to address, right? The sol I think something that's going to be really important to remember is that the solutions that are presented here, don't think of them as being final. Like, I think that they're an amazing starting point, and I'm so excited to see what ideas come from jumping off of this article. So, and that's something that's just so powerful about this, is because you make clear the questions and the problems that you're addressing, this doesn't just become something that you read and you think like, oh, that's cool, there's an idea, done there. It actually serves as a jumping off point for more ideas. So would love to continue this conversation with all of my viewers. Thank you.